Hello and welcome to an overview of our SwiftPAF module. Okay, first of all, what we'll do is we'll go through some of the buttons and the options on the user interface to give you an idea of what they can do. So first of all, we'll go to the top left hand, and this is a new project button. So if you wanted to start a new project, you just click that button and everything that you've got previously set up in the module will be closed, and you'll have effectively an empty module to do what you wish to do. You don't need to use that button if you've opened the module and there's no current job open. All you need to do is import your data and away you go. But if you have a project open, you want to start a new one, use that button. The next button along is open an existing project. So if you have a project that you use on a regular basis, you could have saved that project definition file for reuse, and you would use this button to open that project. Save project, it means that if you have a project that you've just run, or maybe you've gone through the process of setting up the parameters for a regular project, then this is the button you would use to save that into your library. And then in conjunction with the button to the left that we just looked at, you can then open that project for use. Regenerate reports. If you've lost the reports or they've been moved from the folder which they're output to, then you use this button to regenerate those reports. You do need to have a project open, of course, that you've previously run, but that button will regenerate the reports for you. Check for resource updates. As you may know, the PAF resources, the PAF database gets updated on a monthly basis, and this button will go and check if there are any resources available for download. And application updates. So if there's a new build of SwiftPAF, you can use that button to check if there's an update waiting to be installed. And the green tick there just shows, as you can see, that you've already got the latest version, so there aren't any updates to the current version that you're using. Moving across to the right hand side, we have the default options. So if I click on that button, you can see that it will open a form, and on here you will have things such as the parameters that you want to use as your default settings. So as you can see here, you have a checkbox which is either false or true, and if you work your way down, you can decide on which ones you want to use and which ones you don't as defaults. Okay, that message just says that if you've changed anything, they won't take effect until you reload the form. System settings, there is a whole array of different settings, including directories, etc., which are down the bottom here, and you can set these to be where you want them to be on your system or your network, so that every time you use the software, they all point into the correct place as you define here. Okay, that will load the information about your particular version of SwiftPAF, with the contact details at the top should you need to get in touch with us, and then your license details, how many days left on your license, and so on. And finally, the help. This will load an online help which you can use to guide you through anything that you're not sure of. You can go in there and check. Very comprehensive guide, takes you through all the options, all the parameters, and if you wanted to perhaps set some automated processing up, it will also take you through those options as well. Okay, so they're the buttons across the top. Now let's look at the buttons in the middle of the form, as you can see here. First one is configure ODBC. If you're not going to use a text file, you can use this option to go and get your data from either a SQL Server, SQLite, or XML. The next button along is add input. So if it's a text file, such as a CSV file or a fixed width file, then you would use that option, which I'll come back to in a moment. We then have remove selected file. So if you have a file or files already imported and you wanted to remove them, you would use that option. And if you had a number of files already imported and you wanted to remove all of them, then you would use that option. Okay. So without further ado, let's grab a file and go through the process of setting up a SwiftPAF process. So we'll use this button, and that will take us to our default data folder, and we have our file there called demo.b, and we'll open it. Okay, so there it is in our user interface, and we can now, I'll now take you through some of the information that's being displayed. First of all, if you hover over that, it just tells you that you've imported the file and it's a pipe delimited file. We then have the wizard, which we'll come back to in a moment, the file name, where it was stored before you imported it, the record size in bytes, or the file size in bytes, the date created, and the quantity of records. If you have a predefined record structure in your library, then you would use this button here to go into your library. As you see, I've got a number of predefined structure definition files in there, and I could choose the appropriate one if it's present. And if you've assigned the field names for your file, you can then save it using this button into the same folder. It's saying it's not fully defined here, which is why I can't do that at the moment, but we'll come back to that one in a moment. Okay, so let's go to our wizard button. Okay, so the first piece of information that's loading is telling you that it's a record that's delimited by a carriage return line feed. And if you want to change that, which is unlikely, but if you did want to change that, then you have the option to do so. However, in most cases, the software will analyze the data and report back the correct information, and you shouldn't need to do anything at this stage. So we'll click Next. It's now telling you what the delimited fields are, and it's saying here that after analysis, we've determined that it's a pipe delimited file with double quote qualifiers. That's fine. You can change it if it's got it incorrect, but it's unlikely that it will get it incorrect. So you just move forward to the next stage. And here we have the field names. So on the right hand side, you have the field names as presented by the data. And because it's showing field names, that shows you that it's got field names as the top record in your file. And if you wanted to use those, you just click on the Use Data button, which also confirms here that it's the first record that's a header. And then on the left-hand side, you can see it's moved those field names across. So N is okay. We can leave that as name. A1, A2, and A3 are fine. Town, county, and zip we need to change to A4, A5, and A6. So to do that, you just click on the field name, and click your F4 button. So I'm using the function buttons at the top of my keyboard. So F4 for A4, F5, and A6. Okay, so we've now assigned our name and address fields, and we can move forward to the next stage. We now need to map the fields, so we need to tell the process that each field on the import file is assigned appropriately, so the PAF module can do what it needs to do. There are a few options with regards to this. However, if you've named the fields N and then A1 down to A6 as we have here, all you need to do is click the button that says Map All Official Address Fields. And that will just whiz down and assign each field appropriately. And it now knows, the PAF module now knows that we've got address line 1 down to 6 and what the input fields are and what the name is and what the input name field is. If you get any of those wrong, of course, you can break all mappings, so undo everything. And then you can do it manually if you want to. So if you want to assign N to name, then you can do it in that fashion manually. But the best thing to do really is to map all official address fields using this option here. Okay, so let's undo that, press that button again, and you can see it's mapped all the address fields appropriately. If you want to have a quick look through the data, you can by using the navigation buttons here, just to make sure that you're happy that you've assigned everything correctly. Okay, let's move forward to the next stage. Because we only have a name field, we don't have title, forename, surname, then it's only highlighted that. If you had both, then you have the option of choosing one or the other to do your name processing. Okay, we've now got the thumbs up. We've assigned all the properties of that file, and if we now go back to our Save button here, if I wanted to, I can now save this into my library. Demo B2. And there we are. And if we have a quick look in our library by using this button here, we can see there's our demo B2 assigned into our library. Okay, let's move forward to the parameters. Okay, when we looked at the default settings a little bit earlier, you might have noticed that I had a number of boxes checked and some unchecked. They're reflected here in the parameters form. So I had postcode enhancement checked, so yes, I want to do that. I had address enhancement checked, and I had a number of address choices checked as well, such as strict top address matching, retain house names, retain flats, and so on. Rather than go through all of the various options and descriptions and what they mean here, I suggest that you look in the help to have a look at what each of those particular options means. Okay, we also have some name options, and you can split joint names if you want to, but bear in mind that will generate additional records if you have joint names in your data. Plus you can output or choose here how to output your name. So we'll go with full name, but you can, as you can see, you can output as initials, first initial only, and drop any full name information. But we'll go with full name. Okay, so there my parameters have been set, and I can now move forward to the output stage. And in here, a few things you need to choose. First of all, the output file name. Let's call this demob_out. We have the client information up the top right. This is only for reporting purposes. And that first bank, our project, let's call it PAF process, and our job ID or project ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, our default setting for output format is set to pipe delimited, but as you see across the top, you have a number of other options for outputting. So obviously my default is set to pipe, and you can change your output requirement here, or of course, if you want to change your default, then you would go back to your default settings as shown at the beginning of this video. Okay, so what fields do I want to output? There are a number of choices down the bottom. First of all, source. These are the fields that were presented on the original data file. Now bear in mind that these have not been updated throughout the PAF process, so they'll be exactly as supplied. So you can output them, of course, but bear that in mind that they haven't been enhanced or changed by our PAF matching. Then we have our address fields, and in here there are a whole range of flags, for example. We also provide you with the PAF address key and the UDPRN and the delivery point suffix. And then we have some parsed out fields, so flat number, building name, house number, etc. And then a little bit further down, SwiftPAF A1 down to SwiftPAF A9, they are the PAF enhanced address fields. So if you wanted to use those, obviously you would select them here. And just to recap, you wouldn't use the originally supplied fields because they have not been updated. Okay, we'll come back to the address fields in a moment. First of all, or rather go to name. Okay, so again, the originally supplied name field would not have been cased. Obviously, if it was presented pre-cased anyway, then you can still use it. But if you want to use our recased field, then you would choose this field here, which is our SwiftPAF _name. So we'll select that. You might want a salutation as well. If you're preparing this for a direct mail piece, then you might want the salutation. So we can select that as well. And there we go. There are also some flags down the bottom. For example, the PAF name contains a hazardous word. This could be an obscenity or a deceased type word, which again you can also output as a field if you want to know what's in any records that have been flagged as having a potential salacious word in them. Okay, now let's go back to the address fields and we'll select our PAF enhanced address. So A1 down to A9. Move those across, and there we have it. Again, if you wanted to, you can output some of the flags to say, was it a full match? Was it a partial match? Has the record been changed? Has the postcode been modified? And so on and so forth, all the way down to the bottom where you have a number of other options for output. Okay, now on the right hand side, you can see we've got our fields for output here selected. If you wanted to put it into a natural order, of course, you can say, well, I want the salutation to appear at the bottom rather than at the top of the address fields. So I can move that down, rather up, sorry, wrong button there. Move it down to the bottom. Okay, so we now have our SwiftPAF name, so our cased name. We have our SwiftPAF enhanced address lines down to A1 down to A9, and we have our salutation. Okay. move on to the Generate tab and click the Generate button. Okay, a couple of things to bear in mind here. First of all the parameters that you chose during that period of setting everything up are displayed on this window on the right hand side. So you can go through and just double check that you've set everything up as you required. Now down the bottom as well, it gives you an update on the progress. So I'll move my bar up there. You can see that we're processing the data now. We've got 10,000 records input from demob.psv, and it's now doing its validation against the PAF database. So it's read 10,000 records into PAF. It's now put 10,000 records out. Processing complete in 45 seconds. Okay, execution completed. Okay, so that PAF processing of our 10,000 records is finished, and we can now go and look at the results. So if I drag my bar back down again, we can see our buttons down the bottom here. The first one being for the report. So if I click on that button there, it will open the report, which I'll just reduce down in size so we can see it. Okay, so the project details, NAT First Bank, PAF process, and our job ID, when it was run, and the details for the report, name and address details that are in your settings. Okay, over here we have the options that were selected. So enhanced postcode true, enhanced addresses true, strict top addressing true, etc. So you can see all the parameters that you chose. Okay, we now have, let me expand that out a little bit. We now have the results of that PAF process. So the input volume, 10,000, no overseas records. We had potential address obscenities or obscene words in the address number 4. We changed 246 records, unchanged 9754. We added 19 postcodes, we modified 27, and we've ended up with 9,989 perfect postcodes. On the right hand side, you've got the address statistics, so how many top part of the addresses were altered, 24, 21 house names retained, and so on and so forth. Okay, working farms, we didn't choose any company statistics, so the area on the right hand side is all left at 0, and a little bit further down we have a few postcode statistics, so how many full postcodes have been identified, and 7 records have no postcode at all, and down the bottom the matching stats, so match 9829, 98.3%, 1.4% partial matches, and 0.3% no matches. And finally, at the bottom we have the name statistics, so 9,487 single names, 191 joint names, 2 records have no name at all, and 320 have what we call burst failed, which means we couldn't understand the pattern of the name, so we weren't able to parse it correctly. Okay, so that's might be a useful piece of information. Finally, we have 11 records where there's a potential obscene or salacious word in the name field. So that's the report. Now let's look at the output data. So if I use this open output folder button here, then double click it and drag it back into view. Okay, there's our output data. So field headers at the top, then our first record with the PAF validated address and the salutation on the end, dear Mrs. Zarius. Okay, so that's our output data. Okay, so that's the an overview of the PAF module. If you require any more information, please get in touch. Details to follow at the end of the video. Many thanks for watching.